4,200 people were outside shelter in Vegas, not in a forgotten desert town. In the county built around the Las Vegas Strip, where fountains rise on schedule, casino floors glow without clocks, and hotel towers sell, the feeling that nothing outside the resort has to matter. But some of the people counted outside were not just on sidewalks. They were in washes. They were near storm channels. Some were underground. Southern Nevada's own outreach planning names tunnels and washes as part of the geography teams had to cover. That is the part most tourists never see. A city famous for controlled light has a homelessness map built in the dark. And to understand why people go underground, you have to understand the city built above them. On the surface, Las Vegas looks like a city that never turns the lights off. The Bellagio fountains, the Sphere glowing east of the Strip, casino floors without clocks, hotel towers bright after midnight. But beneath that light, there is another Las Vegas, one made of concrete channels dry, washes access tunnels, and places people use because the city above them has run out of rooms they can afford. This is that lower city. The person we will follow is named Darren. Darren is not a real person. He is a composite built from public homelessness, data outreach geography, and recurring patterns described by service providers and reporting on unsheltered homelessness in Southern Nevada. Darren is 44. He once worked kitchen shifts and maintenance jobs near the tourist corridor. Now he sleeps near the places most visitors never look, not because the tunnel is safe, but because being seen above ground can feel even more dangerous. In the next 25 minutes, you will see three things. Why Las Vegas homelessness moves through streets, washes, and underground spaces. Why Clark County's own count shows a crisis mostly outside the shelter system. And what the Strip hides about housing costs, shelter access, and who gets seen. Quick question before we go below the Strip. What city are you watching from? And where does homelessness hide where you live, under bridges and cars, in washes and motels, or somewhere people are not supposed to look? Whatever you wrote, keep that place in mind. Because Las Vegas is not the only city with a hidden map. It is just one of the few cities where that hidden map sits beneath one of the most photographed places on Earth. On the surface, Las Vegas is built for control. The lights are controlled. The temperature is controlled. The sound is controlled. The casino floor is designed so you almost never have to notice the outside world. A tourist can land at Harry Reid International Airport, ride straight to the Strip, check into a resort tower, eat indoors, gamble indoors, shop indoors, and leave without ever seeing the places where thousands of people are surviving outside shelter. That is the point of the city's image. It gives you a version of Las Vegas where every problem is hidden behind glass, security, landscaping, and light. But the count tells another story. Clark County counted thousands of people experiencing homelessness on one night in January. Many were sheltered, many were not. And the unsheltered geography was not just sidewalks. It included washes. It included storm channels. It included tunnels. Before we go further, I want to ask you something. Clark County counted 7,906 people experiencing homelessness on one night. How many do you think were unsheltered outside the shelter system? Write your guess in the comments. The answer comes in the second half of this video. And once you see it, the Strip will not look like one city anymore. It will look like two maps laid on top of each other. 7,906. That is the number Clark County counted on one night in January 2024. It was not a yearly total. It was not every person who lost housing that year. It was a point-in-time count, one winter snapshot of people in shelters, transitional housing, and unsheltered locations across Clark County. One night, one county, one count. The report says that number was 20% higher than the year before. That matters because Las Vegas is often treated like a city outside normal rules. A place of visitors, resorts, conventions, and temporary escape. But the housing math underneath it is not temporary. The count divided the crisis into two parts. 3,704 people were sheltered. 4,202 were unsheltered. That means the larger part of the counted crisis was outside the shelter system. Not approaching outside, already outside. And outside in Southern Nevada does not mean only a sidewalk. It can mean a wash, a desert edge, a storm channel, a tunnel, a place not built for sleeping, but used that way because the formal system has run out of usable options. This is why the number matters. It does not capture everyone. No point in time count does. But it does show the shape of the Las Vegas crisis. This was not mainly a story of shelters quietly holding everyone who needed them. This was a story of thousands of people surviving beyond the shelter door. And behind that number was another pressure. Home prices in Clark County surged. Rents climbed fast. Income did not keep pace. The city built more beds, but the ground beneath renters kept moving. Las Vegas did not count a shelter crisis first. It counted a crisis outside. A number can show who was outside. It cannot show why someone chose the tunnel. Darren is not a real person. He is a composite built from public homelessness, data outreach geography, and recurring patterns described by service providers and reporting on unsheltered homelessness in southern Nevada. Call him Darren. He is 44 years old. He once worked kitchen shifts and maintenance jobs near the tourist corridor. Not glamorous work, the kind of work that keeps a city running while other people are there to forget their own. He fixed what broke: a freezer door, a hallway light, a clogged drain behind a restaurant kitchen. For years, Darren lived close enough to work that the bus made sense. Then the rent changed, then the hours changed, then 1 week became 2 weeks. Then the motel bill took the money that should have gone toward a deposit. That is how the slide happened. Not all at once. First a room, then a weekly motel, then a friend's couch, then a bag. Then the question every unsheltered person learns to answer before dark: where can I be without being moved? Above ground, Darren was visible. Visible to security, visible to police, visible to tourists who looked away quickly, visible to people who saw a person sitting with a bag and understood only the problem, not the path that put him there. Below ground, the calculation changed. A tunnel was shaded, a wash was hidden, a concrete ledge could keep a few belongings together. A flashlight could make the space feel controllable for a few hours. It was not safe. Darren knew that. He kept his phone wrapped in a plastic bag. He placed his shoes above the line where watermarks stained the concrete. He learned which sounds belonged to traffic above and which sounds meant someone else was coming through. The tunnel was not home. It was not shelter. It was not a solution. It was the last place Las Vegas did not make him disappear. And once you understand that, the question changes. Why would someone live underground? Or why did above ground stop working first? Las Vegas is a city built to be seen. That is not an insult. It is the business model. The Strip is architecture as performance. The fountains perform. The signs perform. The hotel entrances perform. Even the sidewalks are designed to move visitors through a carefully managed version of the city. You see what Las Vegas wants you to see. You hear what Las Vegas wants you to hear. You move through spaces built to keep the fantasy intact. Homelessness breaks that image. A person sleeping near a resort corridor interrupts the story the city is selling. A cart near a hotel entrance becomes a security problem. A tent near a tourist road becomes a visibility problem. But moving a person out of view is not the same as moving them into housing. That is where the hidden geography begins. Tunnels were built for water. Washes were built for flood control. Storm channels were built to move danger away from developed land. They were not built for Darren. They were not built for anyone to sleep in. But when the visible city becomes harder to survive in, people look for the places where they can remain unseen. That is not mystery. That is survival logic. A person does not choose a tunnel because it is safe. A person chooses it because every other option has become too exposed, too expensive, too far away, too restrictive, or too temporary to trust. This is the open contradiction of Las Vegas. The city is built around visibility. The crisis survives in places designed to be invisible. Las Vegas did not just hide homelessness. Homelessness learned where the city stopped looking. And once you look there, the open secret becomes impossible to miss. The underground map is not folklore. It is not just a story tourists tell after seeing one documentary clip or one viral photo. Southern Nevada's own outreach planning named tunnels and washes as part of the geography teams had to cover during the unsheltered count. That detail matters because it means that tunnels are not outside the system's awareness. They are inside the map. Outreach teams know the places are there. Service providers know people use them. Local agencies know that some parts of the unsheltered crisis do not sit in plain view. But knowing where people are is not the same as housing them. A tunnel can be easier to find than an apartment. A wash can be easier to enter than permanent supportive housing. A storm channel can become more predictable than the shelter rules above it. This is why Darren's choice cannot be understood from a resort balcony. From above, the tunnel looks irrational. From inside the crisis, it has a terrible kind of logic. It is shaded during brutal heat. It is hidden from many confrontations. It lets a person keep belongings together. It offers distance from the constant exposure of being seen as a problem. But every advantage carries danger. Flood risk, isolation, sanitation, harder medical access, harder outreach, harder trust. A place built to move water quickly is a dangerous place to build a life slowly. That is the underground map, a survival system built inside infrastructure that was never meant to hold people. And the longer someone lives there, the harder the path back above ground becomes. Because the problem is no longer only housing. It is documents, health, belongings, trust, fear, time. The open secret is that the tunnels are not the whole crisis. They are the proof of it. The tunnels are not the whole crisis. They are the part of Las Vegas that makes the rest impossible to ignore. That is the open secret, because Clark County did not do nothing. The official report says the number of people in emergency shelter increased by more than 33%. It also says the county added 1,670 non-congregate shelter beds from 2023 to 2024. That is real capacity, real money, real work. And it matters. A non-congregate bed can be safer than a crowded room. It can give a person privacy. It can help families. It can help people who would not enter a standard shelter. It can change what one night feels like. But the same report also shows the other side. Unsheltered homelessness still rose. Housing costs rose fast. Fair market rents rose sharply. Home prices surged. Income growth did not keep pace with the ground moving under people's feet. So Las Vegas was doing two things at once. It was building more shelter, and it was producing more people who needed shelter. That is how a city can expand capacity and still feel like it is losing the street. Now put Rosa beside Darren. Rosa is not underground. She is 36, working in the hospitality economy, moving between weekly motels and borrowed rooms after rent swallowed the margin she used to live on. She has a job. She has a uniform. She has a schedule. What she does not have is a stable room she can count on next month. Darren is already in the hidden map. Rosa is near the edge of it. That is what the tunnels show. Not only the people already underground, the pressure pushing more people toward places no one built for housing. When the official count separates sheltered from unsheltered, Las Vegas becomes a different story. Now the second number changes what the strip looks like. Back in Act 2, I asked you to guess the number. Clark County counted 7,906 people experiencing homelessness on one night. The question was simple. How many were outside the shelter system? The answer matters because Las Vegas is easy to misunderstand. If you only see the strip, you see the controlled version of the city. If you only see the shelters, you see the part of the system with doors, bed staff, and forms. But the count had another side. 3,704 people were sheltered. 4,202 were unsheltered. More people were outside shelter than inside it. That does not mean shelters failed. It does not mean outreach failed. It does not mean every bed was useless. It means the core Las Vegas crisis was not only a shelter capacity story, it was an unsheltered survival story stretched across streets, washes vehicles, desert edges, and underground spaces. I kept looking at the strip. I kept looking at the count. Then the map of Las Vegas flipped. Clark County counted 7,906 people, and 4,202 were unsheltered outside. One tourist capital. Two survival maps. A crisis outside. That is the reveal. The city above ground sells control. The count below that image shows exposure. And those two realities are not separate. They sit on the same land, the same economy that depends on workers, visitors, resorts, service corridors, security transportation, and endless lights also exist beside a homelessness map that is often hardest to see from the places most people visit. Darren's tunnel is not outside Las Vegas. It is Las Vegas. Rosa's motel room is not outside the strip economy. It is part of the same housing pressure that keeps the strip staffed, clean, served, and running. That is why the number matters. Not because it explains everything, because it tells you where to look first. Outside, there is a fair counter-argument here. Clark County can point to real progress. The county added non-congregate shelter beds. The sheltered count rose by more than 33%. More people were inside than would have been if that capacity had not been added. That matters. A person in a room is not the same as a person in a wash. A family in non-congregate shelter is not the same as a family outside. A veteran connected to shelter and services is not the same as a veteran left without contact. The public should be honest about that. It is easy to say the system failed if the only number you look at is the number outside. But a shelter expansion can save people from the worst version of the crisis while still not being large enough to change the full direction of the crisis. Both things can be true. The county built more shelter, and thousands remained outside. The county improved parts of the system, and housing costs kept pushing people toward the edge. The county could report progress, and the tunnels could still fill. That is the uncomfortable part. Shelter is necessary. Shelter is not the same as housing. A bed can interrupt one night. A room can change the next year. Permanent supportive housing can change the pattern entirely for someone who has been outside long enough for the street to become a system. So the counterpoint does not erase the criticism. It sharpens it. Las Vegas can build more shelter and still lose ground if rent keeps outrunning income. It can move people from one visible place to a less visible place and still not solve the crisis. It can clear a wash and still leave the question unanswered. Where does Darren go after that? So what would it take to make the tunnel unnecessary? So what actually works? Not as a slogan, not as a line in a press release, as a system that could make the tunnel unnecessary for someone like Darren and keep someone like Rosa from falling into the same map. First, permanent supportive housing has to be part of the answer for people who have been outside the longest. Not temporary shelter alone, not a referral that expires, not a bed for one night followed by the same question in the morning. A person who has lived in a wash or tunnel may need housing plus case management, medical care document, replacement benefits support, and time to relearn what stability feels like. Second, low barrier shelter has to be genuinely low barrier. If a person has to abandon belongings separate from a partner, give up a pet, enter at a narrow hour, or accept rules that feel impossible after years outside, many will choose the hidden place they already know. That choice may look irrational from an office. It is not irrational from a concrete channel. Third, outreach has to be built around repetition. People do not come out of hidden places because one stranger offers one form. They come out when the same worker returns. When the offer becomes believable. When the room above ground feels safer than the hiding place below it. Fourth, flood control work has to be coordinated with housing plans before displacement happens. If a channel must be cleared for public safety, the question cannot begin on the morning people are moved. It has to begin weeks earlier with outreach, storage, transportation, shelter options, and housing pathways ready before belongings are lost and trust is broken again. Fifth, prevention has to reach the people still technically indoors. This is Rose's part of the story. Weekly motels are expensive. A missed shift can become a lost room. A temporary room can become a car. A car can become a wash. A wash can become a tunnel. Rental assistance, legal help, motel diversion, utility support, and fast housing navigation are not side programs. In Las Vegas, they are how you keep the underground map from growing. Sixth, affordable housing has to mean housing for extremely low-income people, not just workforce branding for people already earning enough to stay housed. The answer is not to make the tunnels harder to live in. It is to make above ground possible. The cost of not doing that does not stay underground. The cost of doing nothing does not disappear. It moves. It moves from rent help to outreach, from outreach to emergency response, from emergency response to hospital care, from flood control work to cleanup, from one tunnel entrance to another. The city pays, the county pays, hospitals pay, outreach teams pay. Darren pays most of all. He pays in lost documents, a bag moved during a cleanup, a phone damaged by water, a missed appointment because the place he slept was cleared before sunrise, a new outreach worker asking the same questions he already answered last month. Every displacement restarts the clock. Where are your papers? Where did you sleep last night? Do you have identification? Do you have a phone? Can someone contact you? Those questions sound simple if you have a drawer, a charger, a mailbox, and a door. They are not simple in a tunnel. For Rosa, the cost comes earlier. A weekly motel bill eats a paycheck. A missed shift becomes a late payment. A late payment becomes a locked door. A locked door becomes one more person searching for somewhere no one will move her. That is how the hidden map expands. Not only through people already underground, but through people being priced toward the edge of it. The public often sees the crisis only after it becomes visible. A camp, a cleanup, a storm, warning, a tunnel evacuation, a sidewalk complaint. But by then the cheaper options are already gone. A city can spend money moving people out of sight and still never buy the housing that ends the cycle. That is the accounting mistake. Las Vegas is not paying for homelessness once. It is paying for it again and again every time the same person has to start over. And Las Vegas is not the only city with a hidden map. Return to Darren's phone. Not the tunnel, not the strip, the phone. wrapped in a plastic bag because the place he sleeps was built for water, not people. That one detail tells you almost everything about the crisis. A person above ground protects a phone from rain. Darren protects his from the room itself. That should not be normal. But the shape of this story is not limited to Las Vegas. The same thing that put Darren below the strip is closer to the thing pushing people into Los Angeles river channels, Phoenix washes, and motel rooms outside Orlando than most cities want to admit. The details change. The shape does not. A city builds infrastructure for one purpose. A housing crisis repurposes it for survival. A flood channel becomes a bedroom. A parking lot becomes a campsite. A motel corridor becomes family housing. A transit station becomes a waiting room. Then officials call the place unsafe. They are right, but unsafe is not the same as irrational. People go where the formal system leaves room for them to exist. In Las Vegas, that may be a tunnel. In Los Angeles, it may be a river channel. In Phoenix, it may be a wash or a parking lot after dark. In Orlando, it may be a motel room at the edge of the tourist economy. Each city tells itself the hidden place is unusual. Each city tells itself the people there are separate from the real economy. Each city is wrong. Darren's plastic-wrapped phone belongs to the same country as the Bellagio fountains, the Sphere, the resort towers, and the room service carts rolling down carpeted hallways above him. That is the human mirror. The hidden maps are spreading. Here is the part that asks something of you. Not pity, not outrage. 4 specific things. 1. Look up your county's point-in-time count. Not just the total number. Find the split between sheltered and unsheltered. 2. Ask whether your city counts hidden locations. Washes, tunnels, vehicles, motels, river channels, abandoned buildings. The places people go when public space becomes too exposed. 3. Ask what happens before a hidden place is cleared. Is there storage, transportation, outreach? A room ready? Or is the plan simply to move people and count the movement as success? 4. Look at the economy that surrounds the crisis. Who cleans the hotels? Who cooks the food? Who drives the rideshare? Who works the late shift? And what does one lost room mean for them? This is not about blaming one city. Las Vegas is not doing nothing. That is why the lesson matters. The county added shelter capacity. Outreach teams cover difficult geography. Service providers go into places most people never see. And still the hardest question remains. Can the city build a path above ground that is safer than the places people hide below it? By 2029, Las Vegas will either be the city that treated the tunnels as a place to clear or the city that understood them as a warning. The choice in some small way is also yours. And Darren's last light underground is the image Las Vegas cannot afford to ignore. At night, the strip still glows. The fountains still rise. The towers still sell the feeling that everything here is controlled. But somewhere below that surface, Darren checks the plastic around his phone. He moves his shoes above the waterline. He points a flashlight down a concrete channel that was never meant to hold a life. The tunnel was never built to be shelter. It became shelter because above ground ran out of room. That is the Las Vegas most visitors never meet. Not outside the city, under it. Next, we go to a city where homelessness is not underground, but hiding in plain sight inside one of America's fastest-growing housing markets. Disclaimer. This documentary is for educational and journalistic purposes only. It discusses homelessness, poverty, mental health, addiction-related issues, housing policy, and public spending. Composite characters are based on patterns from public records, housing research, shelter data, court filings, and published case studies. They are not intended to identify any specific private individual. This video does not promote illegal activity, drug use, harassment, or harmful behavior. Some footage has been edited or blurred for privacy, safety, and compliance with YouTube community guidelines.